Hey gang, we're going to deal with a Sentinel value now. So the Sentinel value, that's where we're checking to see if something is the way we expect it to be, and that'll help us to get out of our loop. Okay, so this one's a little tricky, and I'm not thrilled with the way they've got the logic set up. But we're going to go with it, and it doesn't test. If we do it the way they've got it laid out, it doesn't test the user's input to verify or validate that it is what it's supposed to be when it's supposed to be that way. So the code that we're going through right now, this will be very assumptive, and on the next couple of exercises I'll show you the right way to do it, and we'll tweak it a little bit. Okay. So for this, we're given the total stars is 0. Num patrons is 0. Now, there's a couple of things I don't have yet. And the things I don't have yet, one is this average stars. So let's copy that, and we'll go ahead and initialize that variable. And that'll be where we're putting our average. And we're going to have to come up with some kind of calculation to take care of that. And we also need num stars. It came in. I'd like to initialize it as 0, just to be a little more formal. Okay. So we've got our string where somebody has been asked, what is it that you want to do? Now, they want us to put our loop down here. That's my little issue that I have, is when they want the loop. I think we should be doing it further up. But they're the one that set this up, and they're the one that's evaluating. So we'll go with their way of doing it. So let's say while num stars, I need a big S in there. So while num stars is what? Well, they've told us it needs to be from 0 to 4. So while num stars is greater than or equal to 0, well, it's greater than or equal to 0, we're going to perform this task over and over again. Well, it's not just greater than or equal to 0. It's greater than or equal to 0 and less than equal to 4. But what is less than equal to 4? Num stars. So there's two conditions. Num stars greater than or equal to 0, and num stars is less than or equal to 4. If that's the case, if it's from 0 to 4, we're going to go through this loop. Now, our average that we need to, and I've got to put my colon at the end so this tab's right for me. Back up. Okay, so now we've got to calculate the average and keep track of things. So each time that we go through this loop, we need to take care of how many times we've gone through this loop. So I've got this num patrons, and that's how many people have been asked, what do you think about that movie? So it's num patrons equals num patrons plus 1. That's our incrementer. So that keeps track of how many times we've gone through, incrementer or counter. Now, we also have to keep track of the total number of stars. So, total number of stars will be equal to total number of stars plus how many stars have been input into the system. So we have to, at this point, trust that the user is going to, they're going to know, put something from 0 to 4. We're not actually testing it. And I know it sounds like I'm hung up on that, but I am hung up on that. So our next thing is we give them an opportunity to do it all over again. So I need these 5 lines of code, and we'll come down in our loop add those lines of code in there as well. We have to make sure they're indented because they are happening within the loop. And now we have to calculate this average. So if these lines of code are what's happening over and over and over again in the loop, the average is not calculated until after we're done and have what I call escaped out of the loop. So let's come down here, and after we've got out of the loop, we're going to calculate what average is, and that's this average stars. So I'll copy that. I'll say average stars, and that equals what? How do we come up with an average? Well, in a nutshell, it's total divided by how many times you've collected data, or how many people have said what they feel. So if we run this, enter a rating for your featured movie, 3. Enter a rating for your featured movie, 4, 2, 3, 4, -1. Average star value, 3.2. The fact that I entered in something outside the scope of that loop, that's what got us out of the loop. Okay? So this did what we wanted it to do. Like I said, I'm not happy with how it goes about it. It's not as pretty and as functional as we'd like it to be, and the way we're going to be doing things in the future. But it got us used to going through and having multiple conditions and setting up this Sentinel value in the while loop. And what is the Sentinel value? Well, num stars is what we're dealing with. And it's the value of num stars that's being input by the user, that depending on what that value is, what allows us to get out of that loop. Now, if I had just left it up here, there would be no mechanism in place to change the value of num stars. Wouldn't change at all. Let me show you what that would look like. I'll comment out those 2 lines of code that we copied and brought down. Now I'm going to run this. Rating for a movie, 4. I'm in an infinite loop. I'm running. I'm still running. And it's hung up. So if I come back and put those 2 lines of code back in, 4, 4, 4, 2, 2, 2, 6. I didn't have to have a -1. I could have had something over 4 and it'll boot me out then. It calculated my average. My average was 3. So as long as you enter a valid number, something from 0 to 4, it'll keep going through. As soon as somebody enters something outside that scope, it bounces you out. All right. So I'll see you in the next